Welcome back. We're here with Callum, the co-founder of HelpBnk. Callum, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show, man. Good to catch up.
Of course, I'm happy to return the favor. Was on your podcast like 3, 4 years ago, so it's really awesome to have you on and learn more about what you're doing now. So thanks for coming out. I appreciate it.
For sure, man. I'm looking forward to it. Let's do it.
Of course. And so you started HelpBnk a little bit less than a year from now, or like ago. How did you come across this opportunity?
Sure. So this all sort of came off the back, funnily enough, of my podcast. This was about 3 years ago. So I was running a small self-development podcast called Happy Days with Callum Church. And any super fans of Eastern might have seen that if they've been looking through the archives of the content that you've been on. Um, but yeah, I was running that podcast, and off the back of that, that podcast opened so many doors and so many opportunities for me. It was always really small, never really made that much money, wasn't hugely successful, but man, like I owe everything to that podcast because I met my business partner through it, I met my mentor through it. Um, and yeah, off the back of that podcast, I got speaking to a guy called Simon Squibb. Now Simon is a super successful entrepreneur. At the time I met him, he'd just come back from Hong Kong, back to the UK, and in Hong Kong he'd spent the last 20 years building one of the biggest creative agencies in Asia at the time, which he sold to PwC for like more money than he'll ever need. Um, and yeah, I got speaking to Simon, and he was saying to me, "Look, I'm going to be starting this new venture. At the time it was called the Purposeful Project, but it was going to become HelpBank, which it's known as now." And it was like, "Look, this is going to be an influencer-led brand. I need a content guy to help me with my content, build up my personal brand and stuff." And I was just like, "Yeah, screw it, I'm in." So yeah, for the last 3 years, we've been building up Simon's, social profiles and following. We're now at 7 million followers cross-platform, and I can confidently say Simon's one of the top three business influencers in the UK at least. It's kind of nuts to see how things have changed over the years.
Yeah.
And Hellbank's currently standing at over 150,000 users in just over a year, which is crazy. Um, so yeah, I guess that's a little bit of background about how we got started. Yeah.
What I love is how you took your podcast and it wasn't successful, but you turned that unsuccessful experience into an experience that changed your entire life. So
Mm.
it's really, really cool to kind of see you not just be like, okay, I'm going to do this podcast and see where it goes, but hey, let's shut down the podcast and let's go work with this guy that has now, brought you so many other opportunities. And at HelpBank, why is giving without taking so important?
Yeah, sure. So I guess this philosophy, which Simon speaks about a lot on his socials, I guess so Simon always speaks about how in the world we operate under this measure of like give and take. I help you, you help me. It's fair enough, right? But I think if if we really look at things like the natural way that humans would help, especially like back in the day, think of like tribes and stuff, like the way natural humans would operate. We just help each other just because we can, just because we're part of the same tribe, just because we should. And just because, say, I help you, Easton, you might not necessarily be the right guy to help me back. But maybe, Tom from the other part of the tribe, maybe he's the right guy to help me. And it all just kind of goes round. And maybe Tom, like you help Tom. And
Mm-hmm.
you all collectively work as a team and operate to help each other. So I guess what we're trying to promote through the content that we're speaking about a lot of things, but this philosophy in particular, which is so key, we should all just be helping each other. Why do we have to lock away business advice and things like this behind a paywall? So we're really trying to champion this philosophy to show people like, look, we should be helping each other, and that's why we built a platform. That's what we're trying to do. um, Helping is human, so we should do that more without taking. Yeah.
I love that a lot. Helping is human. And you talked about your resources not being behind a paywall with, I think that's a very different model with all your resources being free to help entrepreneurs actually achieve this dream. How is this a smart and profitable way to run your business?
Yeah, well, I guess in the short term, you sit there and you look at it and you think, okay, well, how on earth do you monetize that? and we do monetize it, but we I think the most successful entrepreneurs out there are long term thinking, right? Not short term. So a lot of people, if you're short term thinking, you'll look there and think like, okay, how like I've got these followers on social media. How do I make money from it?
Yeah.
Whereas for us, these users on the platform that are able to access it for free and all of our resources. I think you don't have to charge your users straight up. There's ways around it. So the way in which we make money, or one of the ways in which we make money, is we create this content where we feature people's dreams and lift them up and help people and share business knowledge to show people how to get there. One of our latest YouTube videos is sitting at over 5.2 million views now. That video's brought a lot of money, but
Yeah.
we gave all that information out for free. So you don't necessarily have to charge. We're not charging our users. We're going to people that can afford to pay. So we're people that want to feature their ads on our YouTube videos. We'll take their money, right? And the same with these brands that we work with, which power us up. Brands like Adobe, GoDaddy, QuickBooks. We work with these brands that feature in our content, and they help power up our dreamers and the people that we help, and off the back of that they pay us, right? So I think if you think long term, and you don't think like, yeah, what's the instant hit, how do I charge my users? I think there's lots of different ways to do it, and that's the entrepreneurial mindset. That there's lots of different ways to achieve your goals. There's lots of different ways to lots of different routes of monetization that might be you might not think of straight away. Hopefully I explained that properly.
No, no, 100%. I think you're proving, which I like, and we're doing the same thing with our product, is you're proving that you don't have to juice every single avenue of profit. You do
Mm,
not have to make, you know, money at every turn. You can give information for free. You can have a product that actually brings people value that you're not charging a subscription for every month. So I
mhm.
really like how you guys are going about that and showing people that business doesn't have to be money everywhere. And like you mentioned before, you had Simon Squibb on your podcast
Mhm.
about 3 years ago. How did you go about nurturing that relationship with him to the point of co-founding HelpBnk together?
Yeah. You know what? I don't think I was smart enough to be nurturing or thinking about it in that way of nurturing the relationship. It was all quite organic for me. I think, I had Simon on the podcast, and off the back of the podcast, he was like, let's stay in touch. And we met up a couple of times for coffee and just chatted. And, you know, at first, he was just helping me. He was just talking about, what are your goals in life? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to do? And I was like, oh, well, I don't know. I want to do big things. I know that, but that's just about it. Um, and it just it wasn't as if I nurtured the relationship in order to get in that position. It was just a very natural fit. It was like, I wanted to do big things, but I'm not necessarily like a big vision person. I'm more of I'm a good operator. I know how to take that vision and make it real. Whereas Simon's the opposite, right? Simon is the visionary, but he doesn't always like. He's not necessarily the operator that makes it real. He's the leader. He's the visionary, and I put the pieces in place to make it happen. With the help of Jack, who's also my co-founder as well. So, um, yeah, I guess it was just a natural fit, and I think that's quite important to remember when you're looking for business partners and stuff. Like, you can't force it. You can't just work with someone because you want to. You need to have, complementary skill sets. So, like that one just there, like I struggle with a vision, but Simon's brilliant at it. You know, um, so yeah, we just saw it was a good fit, and Simon brought me on. I guess the other thing I could maybe say on that is that I think you really got to over deliver on the value that you're bringing to these people. So Simon, a mentor figure for me, hugely successful guy, just came back from Hong Kong for the past 20 years, building one of the biggest creative agencies in Asia with a lot of money behind him. A lot,
Yeah.
and for me, Callum Church, who was running this mediocre podcast out of his bedroom, like, you know, where the value is like
Yeah.
that, right? So I just try to think of as many ways that I could sort of bring that value up, and it was just making it easy for him. Like, whenever we'd meet, I go to him and I drive all the way to him, and he's only 5 minutes away. Like, you know, it's small things like that that
Yeah.
just sort of try and bridge that gap to bring the value closer, right? and also like Simon needed a content guy. I could bring that, so I lent into that. Um, Simon in the early days actually really wanted me to be bought in. So yeah, he basically said to me, "How much savings do you have?" And I said, "Okay, I've got £15,000 in my life savings. Like, I've been
Yeah.
saving this the whole time. I've always been quite good with money, just putting it away, putting it away." Um, and he said, "Okay, how do you feel about putting that in the business?" And I was like, "Oh, geez, like this is everything I have." Like, but you know what? I kind of thought about that value proposition and what Simon was trying to do there, trying to get me bought in, and it was just like, let's just go all in and put it in, So it's stuff like that that you can do to bridge that gap and try and bring as much value as you can. I think if you just over deliver in that way, then it will happen. Yeah.
Absolutely. And when you started working with Simon, what is one thing that surprised you most about him?
One thing that surprised me most about Simon. That's a tough question. I'm trying to bring myself back to that moment when we first started working together. You know what? I think Simon is a very, very action based guy, like just constantly taking action all day, every day, just move, 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 move. I think that's really key to what's made him so successful is like just being so action biased, not necessarily overthinking things, maybe not necessarily even planning it out so much. Just take action. Let's see if that works. Oh, no, maybe it didn't. So, all right, let's go down this way. Let's try and see if this works. Um, I think that definitely surprised me. That was like a big lesson for me. Uh, you know, Learning from people that have been successful is like action bias. It's those that are most action, like biased towards action, that succeed.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess did that surprise me? Kind of, but that was definitely something I learned when I first started working with Simon for sure. Yeah.
And I think it's important because you look at all these people and you're like, they're probably, like they obviously plan things, but I think a lot of people, it just, let's try something, let's fail. Let's try something, let's fail. Like, you
Mm,
never know what opportunity is going to come about that. And I mean, even just you with your podcast, like, hey, I'm young. Let's start a podcast. I met this guy. Let's take action. Let's jump in. Not, hey, I need to think about it for a year or whatever. And I think it's important. And at 16, you started your entrepreneur journey. What could Callum at 16 learn from you now?
Uh, Instantly think long term. Definitely. Be careful who you work with as well. I think like especially like the people that you go into business with, partners, like business partners, I work with a guy called Jack Wettenstill. I live with him. I work with him. He's literally like my brother. Like, I trust this guy with my life. I would die for this dude, right? And it's like I think you need that. Whether it's in business or self development or what. Like, Jack was always like my buddy in self development. Like, we'd go to the gym together and we'd like keep each other accountable and that sort of thing. And it's grown into this business that we're building together. Um, I think there's like this. I'm gonna butcher it, but like a very loose Naval quote, which says like there's three things that are really important to your success. It's what you work on, it's who you work on it with, and it's where you work on it. So you know, I'm I've been somewhat careful, but I'm very happy with what I'm working on right now and who I'm working on it with, and I'm in a decent place as well. So. Um, yeah, I think making sure that I'm careful with those things is important. Yeah.
You spoke at a school called Malaeus over 3 years
Yeah.
ago.
Mm.
What impact do you hope to leave on the youth?
Yeah, I guess my big thing is really like trying to inject energy into people and help them realize something which I realize. So I'm very driven, and if I try and pin this down to like where that came from, it kind of goes back to like when I was 5. And I have this story that I tell people is like it's not very interesting, but I'm going to share it anyway.
Yeah.
When I was 5, I realized I was going to die, like most people do. And that terrified me. Like I remember it so vividly, like standing, just as high as my washing machine was at home, crying to my mother because I was 5 years old. I was a small person. Um, and I don't know what it is, but something about that feeling, that dread of like infinite nothingness.
Yeah.
like first of all scared me, but always stuck with me as I grew up. I've always been very conscious of this fact, and it's somewhat of a philosophy I live by now. Like I have it literally tattooed to my arm. It says "Memento Mori," and that basically means in Latin like remember death. Because I think as you live life, it's easy to forget that this isn't going to last forever. Um, and I think if you live your life remembering that it doesn't last forever, I think you get the best out of it. Um, so I kind of want to wake people up. That's kind of my thing. That's my purpose. That's what I want to do. Is like help people realize, like, look, you got one shot at this. Like, you don't have time to be working that job that you dislike just because that's the system and that's what you got to do. Like, fuck that. Throw that out. That's a stupid belief. Like, you should be pursuing your dreams. You should be doing what you want. You should be going for things and living the life you want because you only get one shot at this. You got to make it count. So I think that's really what I want to inspire people with and leave people with is, you know, make the most of this. Memento mori. There's no sequel. You got to make it happen now. Yeah.
And with that perspective, do you think if death wasn't a thing, life would be meaningless?
Yeah, kind of in part, like, well, just imagine it. There's like this Neil deGrasse Tyson clip where he talks about death and how it gives us urgency. Like, if we didn't have death looming over us, then what's the point in getting out of bed in the morning? What's the point in doing it? Because you've always got tomorrow, right? What's the point in striving for something? What's the point in struggling for something bigger than yourself? Because you can just live forever. You know, and that's what motivates me. I think it's like, you know, I was saying to you briefly before the podcast, like I used to think that life was all about being happy. I don't necessarily think it is. I think life's all about being fulfilled for sure, but it's also about impact. Like what are we going to leave behind? Like I think the beauty in life is that you can give it meaning, whatever that means to you. You can find your own meaning. I kind of used to ask this really trite and cliche question at the end of my podcast back in the day. What's your meaning of life? And I think that's an important question that we got to ask ourselves because we have the power to make that whatever we want. So my personal meaning is giving people meaning. Whoa, there's fireworks going off. That's pretty cool. Boom, impact point. But yeah, my meaning is like giving people meaning. That's what gives me meaning. Is like helping people show that and learn from the lessons that I've learned and try and share um, this energy and drive that I've been given in my life. Um, so yeah, I think that's something to think about.
And I think I heard Alex Hermosi also talk about that when it comes to meaning
Mm,
and how he can give meaning. We make our own meaning and we
mm,
can slap labels on anything, and have it be whatever we want, changing our belief system,
mm,
changing, our perspective of things and things like that. I think it's a very interesting perspective because I feel like a lot of people, they grow up either very like religious or like with a very, with a overarching meaning of what it means to live life. So I
mm.
think that's a very interesting perspective. I have two more questions for you.
Sure.
Where do you think our ego originates from?
Where does our ego originate from? Well, I guess it's kind of like a survival thing, right? Like if we didn't have ego, then like the ego serves a purpose, right? It like helps us, somewhat work in groups and stuff because we have identity and we have like a name and an idea of ourselves and a role, and maybe like even a title that is our role in our company or in our tribe or whatever that is. So it's a yeah, it's for me it's a survival thing. I think the main thing is that you just got to be careful that you don't let it rule you completely. I mean that there's good ego and there's bad ego. You don't want to be selfish. You don't want these things, but sometimes you need to be selfish a little
Yeah,
bit, right? To get by, to survive.
yeah,
Um, so it's a healthy balance. I think that the main thing is that you've just got to be conscious and you've got to be mindful. And these things are really important because if you're not conscious and you're not mindful and you're not, keeping an eye on yourself, then that ego might run wild. Or equally, you might be so selfless and so people pleasing or whatever that you're not really looking after yourself, and that's not right either. So I think it's just being mindful, and look, the fireworks are going off as well. I must have made a really good point, you
I
know.
don't. That's never happened in the past, like 30 episodes. I don't know what the hell's going on.
It's
That's
pretty cool.
hilarious. Yeah. Um, you have anything else on that point you want to say?
So no, that was it.
Yeah. Okay.
Just be mindful of that ego, yeah, for sure.
I have one more question for you.
Sure.
If you could have dinner with two people, one person from the past and one person from the present, who would it be and why?
Good question.
Thank
Very
you.
good question. Um, you know what? I'm always really inspired by like the startup guys. Like startup culture and startup business is really exciting to me. Just that idea that you can give something to the world, add something to the world, your gift, your idea, your product, and you can get something back for that. I think that's kind of beautiful. It's the beauty of capitalism. There's a lot wrong with it, capitalism,
Yeah.
etc. But like capitalism at its core is actually kind of beautiful. Um, so yeah, I think maybe one guy from the past. I mean, I guess it's kind of the recent past, but I'm hugely inspired by like Steve Jobs. Some like just his business advice, but also just inspiration and stuff. I really like him as like a role model, I guess, within business at least. Like everyone has like their drawbacks as well.
Yeah.
So you can take what you like, and
Yeah.
then maybe look to others for the gaps that they don't have. Um, but yeah, probably Steve Jobs, and from the present, I mean maybe Elon Musk. It's a
Why?
very businessy
Yeah. Yeah.
lineup, but yeah, I think those guys. Um, Yeah, and if I could have an extra, maybe I'd throw in like a philosopher or something, maybe Marcus Aurelius or Seneca
Okay.
the Younger or something like that. But um, yeah,
I like it. Well, Callum, that's all the questions I have. How can people find you, and what is one thing you want to leave people with?
yeah. So the way that you can find me is, I guess the best way is hitting me up on Instagram. So at Callum Church 15. You can also get me on LinkedIn as well. Just search Callum Church. I'm sure I'll pop up. Um, And what do I want to leave people with? I guess just that little piece I said earlier about giving yourself meaning in life, and realizing that this is one shot at life. Like you know if you died tomorrow, how would you live your life? Live that every day. You'll probably be doing all right by the time you get to the end of it. So yeah, I think that's what I want to leave with people with.
I love it.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Of course, man. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it, and it was just really cool to return the favor. So, thank you.
Thank you, dude.